Meet Karim. He's 22. He grew up in Afghanistan, a country torn by warfare for decades. He suffers from mental health problems. He was forced to flee Afghanistan to escape war and oppression. His journey to Europe started with the hope for a better future. Now, in his new country, he has been granted temporary protection status as an asylum seeker. But he does not feel welcome. There are hostile demonstrations being held outside local refugee centers, and he feels a general anti-Muslim sentiment growing stronger. Making matters worse, the government denied refugee status to his father, who was still in Afghanistan. Desperate to reunite with his son, his father died trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea. Karim blames the government for his father's death. He appears vulnerable to radicalization. Members of the local Afghan community are concerned about Karim. They have noticed he's in contact with radicals. We asked RAND practitioners to share their opinions about the case of Karim.
I think to address the problems around Karim and to make him feel more welcome, the people around him have to build a safety net and address his problems. With the mental health care problems, to get him to have more healthy habits, to help him to look into a brighter future and create a social network around him.
So what we need to do is to make sure that the person gets in contact to alternative networks, so networks that are not radical, and hopefully that basically fulfill some of his needs. First of all, the community is there, and second of all, they seem to be interested and wanting to help him. So basically, another step would be to make sure that he is basically welcome in this community, and that this bond becomes stronger. Because if you, as I say, if your social networks, if your primary social networks are outside the radical realm, then the likelihood of you radicalizing is actually quite low.
I think it's if you start to engage with communities, also with individuals, and you explain that you are trying to prevent radicalization, it is often perceived as something that is too security focused. It's like policing individuals and communities. So I think it's much more important to stress that you're actually supporting individuals and communities. You're trying to help and build resilience. So I think it's important how to frame it. It is important to show that you are not considering refugees as a threat, but as people with needs, in need, but also with needs. You look at the story of Karim and his personal background, it's something that is very stressful. So to work with refugees is very, very difficult psychologically, mentally, because it's you cannot distance yourself from these stories that you might hear on a daily basis. So I think volunteers are very important, but I don't think they should be overloaded and have too much responsibility, and one should be aware of the limits of voluntary work in this field.
In my country, we usually have a network around the refugees, and we regularly meet and talk and address all different types of questions. And when you note that somebody is being radicalized, you have to put in extra effort to identify factors to stabilize the problem. So I know a project, a very concrete one, and that's mentorship. So it's funded by it's funded by the government, national government. But it's a small project. But I think it's actually quite good, because what happens is you have Austrian students mentoring students that come from abroad.
So there, like this is a very Finnish example, but there is a strong narrative that because the refugees and immigrants come to Finland, we have an aging population, so we don't have enough money to take care of our elder people. So what was organized an initiative that actually those who seek asylum wanted to do something meaningful during the time that they are waiting for the results of the asylum process. So they went to volunteer with the elderly people in elders people home in Finland, where none of the families and of these people visit. So in case of a very short-term residence permit, there's obviously limited measures that one can do to support. Maybe the one with health issues is the first one, and that also will provide capacity for him later on in life, have better resilience if those issues of depression and so forth are tackled. But let's say that he has been granted a residence permit that it's for a year or more. Maybe it's permanent in nature of somehow that there is a prospect of naturalization of citizenship. For example, it's a different story. So given that, he probably still needs the support for the health issues, the trauma, psychosocial support, but then we can also have the community, close by community, maybe to assist that if there's some recreational activities or volunteer work that he could do to build some sort of relation with the receiving community. That could be one thing.
I think it very much depends on what society offers to immigrants and to refugees right now. And if society is willing to actually open the doors and to let them in, to become part of the game and to be involved. And it does not solve all problems, of course not, but it makes it much easier to actually encourage youngsters and young adults to have a perspective and to try to reach these goals. So it's legal. It's a legal issue in the sense that refugees should have access to labor market, to political participation.
Looking at what is known about push and pull factors for radicalization, it is evident that amongst asylum seekers and refugees, there are individuals who are vulnerable to radicalization. Such as the case of Karim, refugees might experience disappointment or identity issues or suffer from trauma and feelings of desperation. Perceived negative experiences with the system and government may also make them more susceptible to being misled by extremist recruitment. There is a need to train professionals and volunteers working with refugees to enhance their awareness on radicalization and how to support those who are vulnerable to radicalization. Professionals and volunteers can contribute to preventing violent extremism by teaming up with concerned mothers and other refugees who are concerned about radicalization and recruitment. Working together, we can safeguard refugees from being recruited and ideologically exploited. It is important to increase actions for faster and better integration in the new society through work and education. A risk-based perspective on prevention of radicalization will result in 4 potentially more vulnerable groups amongst asylum seekers: refugees with mental health issues, rejected asylum seekers, unaccompanied minors, and unaccompanied minors who are turning 18.